Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto chapter 2. That's right. Verse number 1. Name of the chapter is Lord of the Heart, or Lord in the Heart. And text number 1 is on the board.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Shri Sukuvacha
Sri Shukra Uvacha
Evam Pura Dharnayatma Yoni Evam Pura Dharnayatma Yoni Nashtam Smritim Pratyavaruja Tushtat Nashtam Smritim Pratyavaruja Tushtat Tata Sasajidam Amoga Dristil Tata Sasajidam Amoga Dristil Yat Prag Vyabasaya Buddhi Yat Prag Vyabasaya Buddhi
Vyabasaya Buddhi.
Shri Sukuvacha Evam Pura Dharanayat Mayoni Nashtam Smritim Pratyavaruja Tushtat Tata Sarajedam Amoga Dristil Yat Prag Vyabasayari Buddhi Evam Puradharanayat Mayoni Nashtam Smritim Pratyaviruja Tushtat Tata Sarajedam Amoga Dristil Yat Prag Vyabasaya Buddhi Evam Puradharanayat Mayoni Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudra Tushtat Tata Sasajedam Amoga Dristil Yat Prag Vyabasayari Buddhi
Sri Shukra Uvacha Evam Pura Dharanayatma Yonir Nashtam Stritim Pratyavaharudhya Tushtat Tatha Sasarjedam Amoga Drishtir Yatha Payat Pragbhavasaya Buddhi
Someone else?
Shri Sukuvacha Evam Varanayat Yonir
Evam Puradharanayat Mayonir Nashtam Smritim Tasarchidam Amoga Drishtir
Yatha Payatra Buddhihi.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Evam Puradaranayatmayoni
Evam Puradaranayatmayonir
Nashtam Smriti Pratyavarudyatushta
Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudyatushta
Tadha Sasajidam Amogadrishti
Tata Sajedam Amoga Drishtir
Yadhapya Yadrapya Vasaya Buddhi
Yatapya Yatpragya Sayaya Buddhi. Okay, I guess, is that anyone else? Okay, Sri Sukha Uvacha.
Sri Shuka Uvacha
Sri Sukadev Goswami said,
Sri Shukadev Goswami said,
Evam, just in the same way,
just in the same way,
Pura,
Pura,
prior to the manifestation of the cosmos,
prior to the manifestation of the cosmos,
Dharnaya,
Dharma,
by such a conception,
by such a conception,
Atmayoni,
Atmayonir,
of Brahmaji,
Brahmaji,
Nashtam,
Nashtam,
loss,
loss,
Smritim,
Smritim,
remembrance,
remembrance,
Pratyavarudya,
Pratyavirudya,
by regaining consciousness,
by regaining consciousness,
Tushtat,
Tushtat,
because of appeasing the Lord,
because of the peace in the Lord,
Tata,
Tata,
thereafter,
thereafter,
Sasaja,
Sasaja,
created, Idam, this material world,
this material world,
Amoga Drishti,
Drishti,
one who has attained clear vision,
one who has attained clear vision,
Yata,
Yata,
as
as
Apyayat,
Apyayat,
created, Prak
Prabhu
is formally,
is formally
Vyavasaya,
Messiah,
ascertained,
ascertained,
Buddhi,
Buddhi,
intelligent.
intelligence.
Shri Sukuvacha, Evam Buradaranayatma Bhuyonir, Nashtam Smritim Pratyavarudratushta, Tata Sasajedam Amoga Drishtir, Yatapya Yatpragya Vasaya Buddhi. Sri Sukadev Goswami says, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. Please repeat. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said,
Sri Sukadeva Goswami said,
formerly, prior to the manifestation
prior to the manifestation
of the cosmos,
of the cosmos,
Lord Brahma,
Lord Brahma,
by meditating on the Virat Rupa,
by meditating on the Virat Rupa,
regained his lost consciousness
regained his lost consciousness
by appeasing the Lord.
by appeasing the Lord.
Thus he was able
Thus he was able
to rebuild the creation
to rebuild the creation
as it was before.
as it was before.
In Srila Prabhupada, Divine Purport.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
One big paragraph. The example cited herein by Sri Brahmaji is one of forgetfulness. Brahmaji is the incarnation of one of the mundane attributes of the Lord, being the incarnation of the passion mode of material nature. He is empowered by the Lord to generate the beautiful material manifestation. Yet, due to his being one of the numerous living entities, he is apt to forget the art of his creative energy. This forgetfulness of the living being, beginning from Brahma down to the lowest insignificant ant, is a tendency which can be counteracted by meditation on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This chance is available in the human form of life. And if a human being follows the instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam and begins to meditate upon the Virat Rupa, then revival of his pure consciousness and counteraction of the tendency to forget his eternal relationship with the Lord can follow simultaneously. And as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasaya Buddhi is mentioned here. And in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 41, follows at once. This ascertained knowledge of the living being leads to loving service of the Lord, which the living being requires. So there's more of it. And Srila Prabhupada says, as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasaya Buddhi is mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita. 241 follows as one, at once. That let me read that sloka. It's a fairly famous sloka. It's all about a resolution, how one who is Krishna consciousness, there's resolution, but without Krishna consciousness there isn't. They use that word to begin the verse. Oh, wait a minute, 241. Vyavasayat Mikabudir Ekaha Kurunandana Balu Sakka Hiyanantascha Buddhayo Vyavasayat Vyavasayinam. So the Vyavasaya Atmika, resolute in Krishna consciousness, Buddhi, meaning intelligence. And the last two words he uses, Buddhiya, intelligence, and then he uses Avya Vasayinam, of those who are not in Krishna consciousness. So resolute intelligence, or resolute in purpose, as they say in the verse. The aim is one, serving Krishna, but when we don't have that Vyavasayika Buddhi, that resolute determination to serve Krishna, then the intelligence becomes multi-branched, because we want to serve ourselves and a multitude of others, generally kith and kin, community, neighborhood, country, the planet, the universe. It gets very much spread out, and the living entities ends up satisfying innumerable desires, as it states in 15th chapter of the Gita. He's always full of anxiety, also in the 16th chapter, because there's just unlimited unlimited desires that he's attempting to fulfill. This ascertained knowledge, meaning this certain knowledge, or this knowledge that is proven, there's evidence, it's a fact, this factual knowledge of the living being leads to the service of the Lord. Therefore, the number, leads to the service of the Lord which the living being requires. Without this Krishna consciousness, then that is Maya. And despite the beauty of Brahmaji's creation, which appears very beautiful, the thing is it's always changing to where it's not beautiful and then it's beautiful again. Because, and the thing is, it's not all at once for everything, but it's individualized. It happens to individuals at different times, so you never really can escape the illusion that the creation is beautiful, because it appears beautiful. But while it appears beautiful, there's always different people that are fading out, different living entities that are fading out, who naturally don't think it's beautiful because your body is decaying on you, and you know, you're being forced out. So everything looks different. And sometimes there's these big devastations, which is kind of referring to here, where everything is desolated, and Brahma takes rest at night. He wakes up in the morning. Obviously, he must meditate upon the Lord, and he gets the idea how to serve him. Because by meditating on the Virat Rupa, he sees everything. You know, we know that the different mammals are on the waist portion of the Lord, and the nails of the camels and the elephants, and a couple of other mammals, and you know that the hair is the clouds. So he's meditating upon the Lord and the creation, and he again it all comes back to create it exactly as it was before. So Srila Prabhupada is also saying that can serve us for becoming Krishna conscious again. And in the beginning, when you are definitely not Krishna conscious in many cases, meditating on this Virat Rupa is a tremendous boon or service for becoming Krishna conscious. So let's see, Prabhupada goes on to say, this ascertained knowledge of the living being leads to loving service to the Lord, which the living being requires. The kingdom of God is unlimited. Therefore, the number of assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verse 14, asserts that the Lord has his hands, legs, eyes, and mouths in every nook and corner of his creation. This means that the expansions of differentiated parts and parcels called jivas, or living entities, or assisting hands of the Lord, and all of them are meant for rendering a particular pattern of service to the Lord. The conditioned soul, even in the position of a Brahma, forgets this by the influence of illusory material energy generated out of false egoism. One can counteract such false egoism by invoking God consciousness. So here we can understand Prabhupada's sentences very clearly, that we're meant for serving the Lord. We're his part and parcel, and we're all in a different position, and we should be carrying out our duty to please Krishna. But due to the false ego, thinking I'm this body, that power of illusory energy makes us think that I want to do something else to gratify my senses. You know, this, we somehow ever may give up. This isn't gratifying my senses. This will gratify my senses. And that Prabhupada compares to a hand that no longer wants to function like a hand, but wants to do its own thing. Maybe it wants to taste and eat and digest like the stomach, but the hand can't do that. and doing it simply is a disturbance. So we become a disturbance to the Lord when we forget our Sanatana Dharma or our Varnashram Dharma, whatever position one is in there. The point is that one has to be performing their Dharma. And as soon as we ignore that, we simply become a disturbance in society, we become a disturbance to the Lord, and consequently we generate ill karma. And because everything is completely, perfectly organized by the Lord, those living entities with the ill karma, they get their positions too. But it's in, the world of ill karma. And, the demons have their positions, and, they actually get to gratify their desires in a very wonderful demoniac way. Some of them, better than others. It's funny, because not all of them are poor. Some are very wealthy and rich, and they get to enjoy independently of the Lord in this position. But when one develops a serious malignant disease of bad karma, then person may be born in very horrific conditions and may have to suffer like that. They can still become Krishna conscious by the mercy of the sadhus, the devotees, the spiritual master, if they just happen to be so fortunate. But in such a position, life is very difficult. Or as Krishna says also in the Gita, they have to come back in different demoniac species of life. And maybe it's some sort of demoniac creature, monster. They have to appear. Like there was one Gandharva couple that were cursed by Indra to become Rakshasas. And by accidentally observing the Ekadasi, they were able to revive their position in the celestial worlds. So, it's not pleasant to get out of our natural position, but that's the power of Maya. Maya convinces, this isn't satisfying. You could be doing this, and that looks like glitter. It looks, that'll make me happy. So then we end up as really genuinely in a terrible situation. Sometimes the soul is able to come back due to mercy of the devotees, and ultimately everyone comes back. But the prolonged life and separated from the Lord is simply painful. Let's see, last few sentences here. The conditioned soul, even in the position of a Brahma, forgets his Dharma, forgets how he's supposed to be doing things, by the influence of illusory material energy generated out of false egoism. One can counteract such false egoism by invoking God consciousness. Liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness and becoming situated in the real loving service of the Lord. Is exemplified in the case of Brahma. The service of Brahma is the sample of service and liberation. The service of Brahma is the sample of service and liberation, distinguished from the so-called altruistic services, full of mistakes and forgetfulness. Liberation is never in action, but service without human mistakes. Liberation is never in action, but service without human mistakes. For example here, there's one big philanthropist in New Orleans. I forget his story completely, but he was just a very wealthy person, made a lot of money in the auto industry, selling cars, has many auto dealerships around the city. And something happened in his life. It was actually his father who had some altruistic mood and made some attempt to get his son to be like that. And he would make a little attempt. And after the Hurricane Katrina, which devastated the Louisiana and Mississippi Gulf Coast, he had a food program. And as his father was dying, there was some difficulty with his employees. Everybody, many of his cars got washed out by the flooding. His employees, were scattered all over the country. And, his father was dying. His father on his deathbed told him, he said, whatever you do, don't stop the food program. Because people will remember you for that. They're not going to remember you for how many cars you sold. So anyway, he got inspired. And he does a lot of charity in the city. But the thing is, that's wonderful, except it does have a human fault. Such as, if the food program, is serving, meat, fish, and eggs, then there's some fault. Now maybe if people are that hungry, and to some extent they are, but the problem in a rich country like America is that most of the people are obese. There's a real problem with that. There's a real problem with people eating too much and eating too much protein, and that's the main problem. There are those who certainly have inadequate food and they depend on programs like that. But there's also the problem of eating the wrong things, too much sugar, too much fat. And because of what he serves, it may not be perfect. It may be offered to God in some form or another, or it may not. I don't know that. But there's some mistake there. But when a person is on the liberated platform, they're like really absorbed in rendering service to Krishna. But they don't make those mistakes. Like our Food for Life program, they distribute prasadam. They don't make that mistake. They distribute, it's the largest vegetarian or plant-based food distribution program in the world. People may say this and people may say that. But when it gets down to it, the program is actually doing something throughout the world on every day. Whereas what the critics are doing, I don't know in that regard. Srila Prabhupada certainly wanted prasadam distributed within 10 miles of the temple. He didn't want anyone going hungry. So that's one example. Never may be people who go out and they want to entertain the public. And they go out singing, in some tourist area. All over the world it's like that. In tourist areas there are some sort of accomplished entertainers, whether it be musicians or magicians, or all sorts of people who entertain the public, and some of them even derive their living like that. They collect some donations for entertainment. But what is the result of that? The people get somewhat entertained. They may even think about it. They may even think about it at the time of death. But what does that get one? What does it free us from misery? It gives us some moments where we may forget the things that bother us, and we may just become enamored by the artistic performance that we witness. But there we see the devotees coming down the street, basically sort of doing the same thing, entertaining the public with some dance and music. But because it's Krishna's holy name, everyone is getting liberated. People won't have to take such a demoniac birth if that was their karma. People will be elevated Some people even become devotees because of the order of Krishna's liberated devotee. The devotees follow those orders, they pass those orders on. The Sankirtan leader, they may not even be what we would call, a liberated soul. They may seem to have this fault and that fault. But because they're following Srila Prabhupada's order and they're trying to organize some Sankirtan, and they're making some arrangements for the devotees to go in Sankirtan, then, the order is perfect. They're following the order of Srila Prabhupada. They're following the order. And Srila Prabhupada is only following the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who is following the order of his great father and his spiritual master, his Diksha Guru, who encouraged him to continue following Bhaktivinoda's mission. All the way to the chief disciples of Lord Chaitanya, the Goswami. And then Lord Chaitanya himself, who appeared as a devotee. He appears as a guru, an acharya. He establishes a movement to save the world. The Harinam, Sankirtan movement. There was no Hare Krishna movement before Lord Chaitanya. So, him and Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur and all the devotees were always on Sankirtan, spreading the mission, teaching, saving people from birth, death, old age, and disease. So, all the way down to Srila Prabhupada. Just one lone devotee. He was like just one lone, meaning by himself. 500 years after Mahaprabhu comes to the Western world and spreads Krishna consciousness. So, Lord Chaitanya has been making arrangements, throughout his era, the Chaitanya era, predicted to last 10,000 years. All living entities can, escape the horrible Kali Yuga, which simply puts people in misery. Day after day, people are suffering. But the Sankirtan movement takes us out of that suffering and gives us a chance to again become Krishna conscious. So, that is service and liberation. Or liberation is never inaction. It's full of devotional service. But it is service without human mistakes. It doesn't mean that the devotee coming down the street, doesn't have, a body with 2 arms and 2 legs with, bones and blood circulating within. It doesn't mean that one day they may not become crippled or something like that, because that's the nature of this world. But what they're doing is perfectly pure. So sometimes eccentric people, they think that perfection means that you become something like God, even in this world, that you develop all mystic perfection, your body is somehow absolutely perfect. And they become naive because they don't understand that everyone in this world will grow old and die. Everyone in this world will become diseased. And it's the consciousness that's important. The body, it's a service vehicle. Just like an automobile, when the car's running good, you run it. As it starts to get old, you take care of it. And, you utilize it to its capacity. Like, we don't take that old farm truck to Picayune because it's probably going to break down on you, so to speak, if you try to go to Slidell or New Orleans with it. And that thing would be smoking, it'd be on the side of the road, and we'd all be stranded. So we utilize things according to its capacity. Srila Prabhupada, he was translating on his deathbed. He had to use a dictaphone. He used a dictaphone most of his career as an author. He used to have to type out on a manual typewriter by himself, pecking with 1 or 2 fingers, maybe on 2 hands. I'm not sure if he used both hands or 1 hand. He wasn't trained as a typist. So when he got some assistance, the devotees saw that it was quicker and easier for him to use a dictaphone and just to dictate it, and they would transcribe it and type it out. They would, you could always find a typist, and typists would sit there and listen to it and type it out. And he continued in that way, but his production on his deathbed certainly wasn't as great as his production a few years before, or maybe a year before. Gradually the body became less productive in that field, and he was concentrating more and more on remembering Krishna, to the extent that when he would take Charnamrita, he would say, "Now I'm surviving just off Charnamrita." Previously, no more mating, no more defending. Now, no more eating. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The nature of living entities in this world. We eat, mate, sleep, and defend. The difference between us and the animals is that we can become Krishna conscious. So eventually, at the end, you have to give it all up. Prabhupada was happy to give it up, but not materialist. Why would they be happy? That's all they know. I can't eat no more. Nothing tastes good. It all becomes depressing. So along with dying, you have to become depressed. At least in Krishna consciousness, you just deal with the pain and, happy that, at last I'm able to give up things in this material world. His body is reaching its end. Krishna certainly, devotee has faith in Krishna, so he's just waiting. What does Krishna have in mind now? He's put me through so many adventures in this world. What in the world is he going to do next? It's time for me to move on. Where am I going to move to? It's interesting. Devotees are, they're happy in that sense. I've done what I can do in this world, that's for sure, because look at me. I don't have no more facility. Krishna's taking the facility away and he's sending me somewhere else. And I can't wait to get there. There's that story, I think it's a disciple of Bhakti Churu Maharaj. One lady, I think it's Bhakti Churu, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a lady who was born in an Indian-British family. And she became attracted to the movement, especially one Kirtaniya in the movement from Ireland. He became, Sri Bhuvanath was his name. He became quite famous in this kind. He's passed away now. Died of cancer at around 50 years old, something like that. But he was a prominent Kirtaniya. She would go out on Sankirtan with him. And then, I don't want to say the whole story, it'll strain my memory too much because I haven't read it in a while, haven't heard it in a while. But just a quick synopsis of it was that things started to happen that made her think about one brahmachari that had passed away in the same temple that she was serving in a few years before. And the more she investigated it, the more and more she became convinced it was her. And that brahmachari had become a little fixated upon one lady that cooked in the kitchen, one Indian lady that cooked in the kitchen. She never realized it. She hardly remembered who it even was when the lady who was thinking that she was that brahmachari, she interviewed her. But that lady couldn't hardly remember the person. But so when he was up, she became convinced that when he was out on Sankirtan and had an automobile accident, he didn't have it, he wasn't driving, but he died in the accident. That he was thinking of that lady, and consequently he took birth as her, an Indian family, but became attracted to the same temple, the same Sankirtan leader. She even interviewed the devotee that was driving the car that had the accident. She had dreams of the place where she used to live, and she went there and it was there, and she would dream about the park that she used to be in. So my point is that he was a new devotee. He wasn't even he had gotten initiated the day before. I can't remember who gave the initiation, and he died the next day going on Sankirtan. So. So Krishna sent him back in a certain circumstance. The laws of nature work, just like Bharata Maharaj came back as a deer, because that's what he was thinking of. So she was convinced that she was the brahmachari that died and was thinking of the lady in the kitchen, and came back as a lady in an Indian family in Britain around the same temple. She's convinced of it. If you read her story, it's very convincing. There are a lot of factual scenarios. There may be some possibilities, she's just reading into the logic of things, But it's very convincing stories for those who have faith in Krishna's words in the process of reincarnation. It's kind of an obvious thing.
But you said he did 2 years before she came, so 2 years, right?
I don't remember how many years. It was a few years. I didn't say 2. I said few. I don't know if it was 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
But I mean, how he could incarnate, like then she was in an adult body. She was already adult woman, and he died.
No. She came back as she came back as a baby, so it was only.
Oh.
It was only like maybe 16 years later where she started to become a devotee. She even tells about the different trauma she went through before becoming a devotee, but gradually was attracted to the movement. But like the same Sankirtan leader was still alive, but he was older, because they were all young people then, in their 20s. Sankirtan leader was now, in his 40s, he was early 40s. And she actually went on to serve him before he passed away. He actually encouraged her in Sankirtan, chanting. And she became a major part of the Harinam group there. I don't know if it's London or one of those ever British cities, But then he passed away, and she even talks about what she's done afterwards. But he was like her Siksha Guru, her instructing spiritual master.
Before and after.
Yeah, before and after. So, devotees don't have human mistakes, but we shouldn't equate mistakes with simply having a body that has disease or, certain material imperfections, like having to grow old and die. That doesn't mean that's a mistake. It just means, that's the nature of this world. The devotee's aware of these things, and he's identifying himself as a spiritual being within the body who will leave that body and go on to wherever God makes his destiny, like that. So that's the beauty of devotional service. By meditating on Krishna, like Brahmaji, we remember our dharma, especially our spiritual dharma, and the devotee can move on to serve Krishna in very intimate way. We can join the Leela of the Lord and the associates of the Lord and serve him in all sorts of dynamic ways. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Anything else?
Thank you very much for a very interesting class.
Okay, this is my chapter, The Lord of the Heart. Prabhupada named me after the Lord of the Heart. That's what Yogindra Vandana means. One who is worshipped by great yogis, Prabhupada says. That is Paramatma, the Lord of the Heart. Srila Prabhupada keeps
Jai.